Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 things that I've learned from overlanding. Some of you may be thinking like, oh, overlanding is so weird and it's so niche, like why would you do this? But again, I'm going to walk you through a few things that I've kind of picked up from overlanding itself that now has positively helped me in my job, in my life, that kind of thing. So if you want to hear my 3 things that I've learned from overlanding, stay tuned.
Where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys, so as I mentioned in the intro today, I'm talking about the 3 main things that I've learned from overlanding. Now, there are tons more than this, right? But YouTube and podcasts, they love lists. Everybody loves lists.
I love lamp.
So it's just easier for the brain to comprehend if I say, here's my 3 that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to kind of break this down like usual. I'm going to kind of tell you guys what the episode's about because I just want you to get value out of it. I'm not here to clickbait you or trick you into anything. I want to tell you what the video is about, tell you what the podcast episode's about so that you say, yes, this is valuable for me, or no, it's not. So let me kind of break this up into 3 sections. So the 3 things I'm going to cover that I've learned are navigation, just kind of how I've grown as a person, being able to navigate around the world thanks to what I've learned from overlanding, being prepared just in general. Again, I did an episode, and I'll put a card to it up here if you're on YouTube, about why overlanders make great preppers, right? So not to be like a crazy, I'm afraid of nukes or anything like that type of person, but just being prepared in general, I think is a very good trait. It's a very good thing to have. You know, think back to like the COVID days when everybody ran out of toilet paper. Those people were not prepared. They were not thinking ahead. They were not aware of what was going on around them in the world, and they suffered for it, right? So being prepared and kind of taking that knowledge that you get from overlanding and being able to apply it to your life, I think is a positive, and I'll talk through that a little bit. And then the third thing is just general organization. I've been a pretty unorganized person, and if I could show you my office right now, you see this box back here, you see all this stuff on the shelves, like I'm not a terribly organized person. So with overlanding and being forced to sort of organize my stuff, I've learned quite a bit about organization, and it's helped me in my, day-to-day project management type stuff that I do for work and other things. So again, I'm going to dive into that as well. So let's start though with navigation. Let me tell you a hilarious story, I think, from my childhood when I first started dating my wife. So this was like 20 years ago. I was like a young 20-something-year-old man. And these were pre-GPS days, right? This was like MapQuest. If you're young and you don't know what that is, Google it. MapQuest was a website where you could put in, it's basically like Google Maps back in the day, but you would put in your address that you wanted to go to, and you'd put in your starting address, and it would give you step-by-step instructions, and you would print those instructions, and you would take them with you, okay? I'm not that old, okay? I'm 43. I'm not that old, but I sound like an old person driving a Model T, and I promise I'm not that old. But that's what we had back then. Like in the early 2000s, you didn't have GPS, you didn't have smartphones, you had flip phones. You could barely play Tetris on the thing, right? It was a different world. But so now picture young me, right? I'm coming up from Bloomington, Indiana, so southern Indiana, up to sort of the Indianapolis area where my wife lives, my then girlfriend lived, and I was supposed to go out to dinner with her and her family. And I have my little MapQuest, and I'm driving my truck, and I'm coming up the highway, and I get on 465, which if you don't know, in Indianapolis, we're called the Circle City because of this highway. It's 465, and it goes around the entire city. It's just a big circle. But on a map, on a printed map, sitting in your passenger seat, that circle looks really small, right? And I'd never really been in India. I'd never really driven in a big city at all. I'd just been in like rural southern Indiana my whole life. So I go up here and I'm going and I'm trying to look at this paper and drive at the same time, and I don't really know where I'm going. And guess what? I get to a point where I realize I'm supposed to be getting off at this next exit. I'm confirming it on my piece of paper, and then I realize there's no way I can get over. I'm going to miss it. So in my mind, I go, you know what? That circle's real small. I'm just going to go past it, go around, and I'll come back to the same exit again, right? Like it's easier to do that because again, you don't have GPS. You can't get off of the next exit and then like figure your way back up. I mean, I could have, right? It actually isn't that hard. But back then when I was young, I was like, oh, that'd be way harder to get off the highway. I'm going to get lost in a neighborhood or something, right? I'm never going to find my way back to the highway. I know if I stay on this highway, it will bring me back around. So for those of you that do know Indianapolis and know that it's actually fairly large, you're laughing right now because you know that I drove for like an extra hour basically to circle the entire city and come back around. So probably about 20, 30 minutes into this, my flip phone, my non-sophisticated flip phone rings, and my wife, then girlfriend, is like, where the heck are you, right? Like my parents are getting ticked, like we're supposed to go to dinner, and I'm like, go without me, I'll catch up, right? Like, and I'm explaining this to her, and she's like, but where are you? And I'm like, well, I missed my exit, so I'm going around the loop to come back around. And you can literally hear her parents laughing at me in the background, like most embarrassed probably that I've ever been. But so take that as a data point, okay? 20 years ago, that's where I was with navigation, okay? So not great. And I encourage you guys to laugh at me. I think it's a funny story. I know I was an idiot back then. Since then, though, right, over the last 6-7 years or so of doing this overlanding thing, granted, we have GPS now, which does diminish your abilities a little bit because you can be a little too reliant on the GPS. But just overall as a whole, I've become a lot more knowledgeable about the way that, roads work. I've become a lot more knowledgeable about the way trails work, what's a legal trail, what's not a legal trail, that kind of thing. And so I've learned a lot, but then just from the GPS and just, kind of learning your way around, going up through Chicago, going up to Wisconsin, going over to Michigan, going down to Kentucky, I've now driven enough and traveled enough that I've learned a ton of stuff about what to look out for, where to find stuff, gas stations, food, that kind of thing, right? And that has definitely positively impacted me. Plus, now I know, especially, again, the GPS is a little bit of a crutch that can help you. But if I bypass an exit, then I know I can either let it reroute me and figure it out on its own, or I can hop off, go back, and it will reroute it and figure out a way to get me to my destination. So GPS does help a lot. But again, just that knowledge, knowing like, hey, if I jump off at the next exit, go under this highway and hop back up and go back the other way and get off at my correct exit, I could fix this problem. That has been huge for me. So again, having just the ability and the confidence, I think, that comes with having to plan out a trip, that helps a ton too. You look at maps, you start to learn about maps, how to read maps, how to use maps. There's a ton of stuff that comes from overlanding that then you can use in your everyday life, right? If you're going to take a trip with the family to Florida, again, in the past, I would have been a lot more hesitant, a lot more scared about it. Again, GPS is kind of a crutch, kind of a nice way to get around it. But just looking ahead of time, now I'm starting to plan overlanding trips, which are a lot more tricky because they're not really roads, or they're, Forest Service roads, and it's just harder to find information on it. But being able to drop some points in there and know enough to be able to get in, find a spot, explore in between, find another spot, that kind of thing has, again, added confidence and helped me just be a much more confident and much more competent person when it comes to navigating in normal life, going to wherever I'm going, a business thing, a family vacation, that kind of thing. So, just through practice, having to do more navigation, which you have to do in overlanding, helps you out in your personal life. So that's the navigation piece of this. So second, being prepared. What I mean by this is, there have been times where, I've been out in the winter or whatever, and maybe I had a coat with me because I had gone to work. But if something were to happen, if I were to get stuck, I picture this. A few years ago, there was an incident in Georgia where they got hit with a big ice storm, and most of those folks, one, they didn't have the plow trucks and the salt trucks to be able to deal with even just a light dusting of snow or ice, and two, the folks weren't used to driving in it. So there's all these pileups, right? And people are stuck for days out there in their cars. That's scary, right? The fact that you could potentially freeze to death or die or starve to death or something like that because you went out to go to work and then the conditions changed and you weren't prepared for it is pretty scary. And this isn't, my idea behind this is not to scare you, right? But again, through overlanding, like right now, if I got in my truck and that same thing happened to me, I have a built-in refrigerator, a built-in dual battery, I have flashlights, I have, freeze-dried food, I have a stove that I can cook with, I have propane, I have a portable, foldable bathroom. So if I had to get out and go to the restroom, I have a tent in my truck that I could use for that. I have a rooftop tent that I could sleep in. So, because I'm prepared through overlanding, because I drive an overlanding rig as my daily driver, it also prepares you for emergencies and things like that. There are also just fun things, right? Like when I go to the grocery store, I've got this fridge in the back of my truck. If I need to grab some frozen stuff or some refrigerated stuff, I can throw it in my refrigerator. I can go run some other errands. It all of that has helped me in a positive way in my normal everyday life. And just being prepared in general has kind of made me think about those things, right? It's made me think about it for my kids. My kids will run out the door in shorts and a t-shirt in the dead of winter. And I'm like, absolutely not. You need to bring sweats with you. You need real shoes and socks. You need to get a jacket, right? Like, just be prepared just in case. Just in case the person that's picking you up for swim practice, their car goes off into a ditch, right? You can't just assume that you're 100% going to make it from point A to point B in, abnormal winter conditions. So being prepared, having those tools and stuff on you, having things, little things like a flat tire. There are a lot of people nowadays that don't know how to change a tire on a vehicle. I've got, I had a high lift jack. Now I've got this unijack thing that helps me lift up the truck. It's got a built-in jack stand, so I don't have to worry about the truck falling on me or the high lift kicking out. So I've kind of thought through these safety concerns, and I've got tools in place to repair tires. I've got tools in place to change tires. So again, the overlanding thing has made me more prepared in general than I think most folks out on the road. So there's some positives to it, to learning about overlanding and that sort of thing, because it can transcend into your normal life. So then third, let's talk about organization. This kind of is close to being prepared a little bit, but where I'm going with this is, and I'll put a card up here if you're on YouTube, I did an episode about a week or two ago about organization and how important it is and how easy it is to do it once you put your mind to it. But again, as I've mentioned in other videos, like, I'm not super organized typically. But through overlanding, it has helped me really sort of start to prioritize and group things together. It's made me sort of think, how do I, when I go out and I want to cook, what all am I going to need? How do I organize that in an easy to replicate way where I know where everything is, everything has a spot, right? And then once you learn that and you get this all set up, and in my case, I have drawer systems. You might have an SUV, you might have a drawer system, you might not, you might have crates. There are a million different ways to be organized. But as your brain starts to sort of morph into that almost like project management, like, problem solving mode, it helps in a variety of ways throughout your normal life, throughout your work. That's helped me quite a bit in my work to be able to compartmentalize and organize different tasks, different things like that, because I've sort of rewired my brain in the last 5 years to think more about problem solving and how do I make my life easier? How do I streamline things? How do I make sure that I have everything that I need when I go on a trip? The same stuff applies in your daily life, right? How do I organize my refrigerator in my house? How do I organize my pantry? How do I know what food I have? How do I, you know what I mean? Like, how do I get my garage all set up so that it's not just a bunch of stuff thrown on the floor, but it's actually organized and everything has a place? So again, that sort of organizational mindset that you gain from overlanding is definitely something, in my opinion, that you can then take out into your job, into your personal life, into your garage, your fridge, your basement, whatever kind of stuff you have. Just being organized from overlanding will help you in your normal life. So those are kind of the three things that I wanted to touch on in this episode. If you are on YouTube, post up in the comments below. Let me know what you guys have gotten out of overlanding. Like, what has it changed in your life in a positive way? If you are on the podcast, there are links to all my social channels. There's a link to the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group down below. Those are great places to talk about these topics. And I'll post up this episode each week in the Newbie Overlanders group and say, hey, here's my latest episode. Thought it might be helpful because it's about organization or whatever, right? And then people will chat about it. So if you want to join the conversation, check out those links down below. Also below this video, if you're on YouTube, is a join button. That's just kind of a passive way to support the channel. You get early access to the podcast episodes as well as all the other videos that I do, like gear videos and do-it-yourself modifications and things like that. So if that sounds good to you, that's a cool way just to support the channel, say thanks for the content, keep it coming, and also to get some early access and other perks. Then there's a link to my Patreon group where we've got a 24/7 Discord. We do a once-a-month phone call, and we also we're doing a couple trips every year. So we're getting ready to go to like Garden of the Gods and some places in Illinois here in August, and that's going to be a ton of fun. I'm super excited to meet some of these folks that I may have not met in person. So if you want a more active way to support the channel and be involved, that may be a good way to do it. And then last but not least, there is a link to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping themed patches and stickers. So if you're into that kind of thing, definitely check those out. Things like I hate people or F people, let's go overlanding, or I hate people, let's go camping, right? So that kind of thing, check those out if you're into that at all down below. But again, thanks so much for watching. Looking forward to talking to you guys in the comments, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.